then flow in a northwesterly direction, actually the other way, up into an interceptor, to a 10-inch interceptor that would then flow in a easterly direction to the existing Pleasant Drive pump station. Pleasant Drive pump station would have to be upgraded and basically rebuilt, as well as the force main. It's an existing 8-inch force main in South Concord Drive that would have to be upgraded from an 8-inch to a 10-inch. There's actually already been a section that the township has already upgraded from 8 to 10-inch on a SEPTA bridge project. And I should also discuss that the township has had long-term plans to upgrade the Pleasant Drive pump station, and has been part of their long-term plan. It will then continue north over and continue actually to all the way up through to South Concord Drive, continues right around through there in a northwesterly direction, where it will discharge into an existing gravity sanitary sewer main that flows to the West Goshen wastewater treatment plant. There are sections of that gravity sanitary sewer main that will have to be upgraded as a result of our project. The flows will then go into the West Goshen wastewater treatment plant for treatment. The West Town currently owns approximately 530,000 gallons of capacity in the West Goshen treatment plant. The current flows are approximately 200 and some thousand, but the capacity for our property to be included in the Act 537 plan and treated there is really created by the township's proactive online management program that has addressed what known as their Route 202 study area that was originally proposed to be public sewers installed, but because they've been able to have a very effective online management plan, there's approximately 134,000 gallons that was projected for that area, and they actually put a peak factor or a safety factor better of about 20%. So it's around 160,000 gallons that was originally projected to go to the West Goshen treatment plant that will no longer go. And as a result of that, the township has a significant investment and asset in that treatment capacity in there, which is currently not being utilized, and there's no projected use for it. So our project could, through an Act 537 plan amendment, could be included in the public sewer service area and the Route 202 study area removed. And there would be adequate capacity, therefore, to treat all the wastewater that will be generated by our proposed site.
Fred, let's focus on that last part. What additional revisions to the Act 537 plan would be required in order to provide public sewer into the property?
Okay. The first step will be to remove the Route 202 study area, which would free up the capacity. So that's step one. Step two will be to change the designation for this property from a community disposal system to connection to the existing public sewer system. The next step would be to identify all of the proposed upgrades, not only the route there, and then all of the proposed upgrades, both proposed, meaning proposed pump station or pump stations on our site, proposed force main going down Street Road, the upgrade to the existing Pleasant Grove pump station, and the upgrade or replacement of the existing 8-inch force main in South Concord Drive to a 10-inch, as well as the upgrades to the gravity sanitary sewer system from where it discharges sewer flows into the West Goshen wastewater treatment plant.
And with respect to those upgrades you mentioned, what additional permitting or approvals would be required in order to be able to install those upgrades?
There will be a water quality management or Part 2 permit for the approval of the pump station upgrades, the new pump station, as well as the force main, the gravity discharge, and because the number of units on the proposed development exceeds 250, the actual collection system on the development site would actually require a Part 2 permit. There would then be PennDOT permits for highway occupancy. There would be a township highway occupancy permit and potentially some erosion and sedimentation control for the off-site upgrades.
Okay, and lastly, at what stage does the sewage planning permits, approvals, and upgrades you just discussed typically occur?
During the land development approval process and all throughout the process.
All right, I have nothing further from Mr. Ewert.
All right, Krista Camp for the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. Hi, Fred.
Krista.
So in your report, which was marked A63, you referenced 3 different on-site processes that could be used. Do you have a preference if Toll decides to stick with the community system? Which of the 3 you would prefer?
I would prefer the sequential batch reactor process for various reasons. Number one is that it is very easy for me to adjust when the treatment plant, when the development is just going online and we don't have full build out. So I can adjust both the height and number of cycles per day. It also provides one of the highest levels of treatment. But almost more importantly is for the eventual operators out here, there are many, many sequential batch reactor processes in Chester County. It's the most common treatment method, so the operators can rely on other operators from adjoining municipalities throughout Chester County to gain knowledge, to answer any questions, spare parts, and because of that, it's relatively easy to obtain qualified operators because they're very familiar with this process. Not that the modified Bardento or BEST isn't, they're just not as popular, and they're not as popular for a reason. This probably provides the highest level of treatment, and the SBR process and technology is commonly used with drip irrigation where you're required to denitrify.
Okay, thank you. The plans have not, they're still in the preliminary stage, so, and the design of the community system is obviously still very preliminary. So you have not, and Toll has not determined yet where any of the specific component parts of a community system will be located, correct?
No, I would say the only thing that we've done is we have identified 26 acres of disposal fields, and we have preliminarily selected a general area for the treatment plant down in the southeast corner of the property, just because it's the lowest elevation down in there. But no, there's no detailed design at all.
And would you agree with me that those facilities would have to be strategically located to prevent residents from having negative impacts from odors?
Yes, and that's the reason that we picked it down in the southeast. A properly operated treatment plant doesn't produce odors, but DEP recommendation is to be 250 feet from an occupied dwelling. So the place that we have picked provides the greatest distance from there. Noise and odors are always a common concern of both existing and future residents. So that's why we picked an area that is probably the furthest away that I can have it that makes sense from a topographic. And that's why we picked that lower area.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I would think the sludge holding tank, that could potentially have objectionable odors.
Any mechanical treatment system could fail, which could cause odors. But the goal here would be to keep it minimal, so that it would not impact that. And the most commonly, and we also have that corridor, as you'll see, is probably the best corridor right there, which will have the least impact on the residents, because odors can occur at a treatment plant.
Okay. And you also reference in your report the need to have a control building with blowers and electrical equipment. I would assume that there's some noise that would be emanated from that type of a building. Is that correct?
Well, that's why we put that type of equipment inside of a building to minimize the noise, because they do generate noise. So we do two things. We put sound enclosures on the blowers, but then we also put them inside of a building because there absolutely can be noise, and that's what has to be a design consideration. that's taken into effect.
So when that type of a building is designed, you would incorporate into the building techniques or the architectural materials that are used, something to mitigate the noises? Is that a correct statement?
Yes. That's why we put the sound enclosures on them. And it's also why we use a masonry building and not like a steel building that would vibrate. We also have specialty masonry blocks that are in there that actually absorb the additional sound that's in there. But there will be noise. I mean, you're going to hear it. If you walk by the building, you will hear it. That's why there's a 250-foot buffer zone, because of the properly designed one, you do not hear it at 250 feet.
And what about, you refer to a generator that would have to be located outside of the plant within a sound enclosure. Would that generator also potentially create very loud noises if in use?
Well, the reason that I don't put the generator inside is that if it's inside, I can't put a sound enclosure on it. So I specifically put it outside so that I can have a quiet site sound enclosure on it. But when a generator runs, you will hear it run. It will sound like a lawnmower.
And how frequently does that generator have to be tested? Or obviously it's used in emergencies when the electricity goes off, but is it also tested on a regular basis?
It's run for at least a half an hour every week. So we can adjust the time. My normal time is a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. We normally do it somewhere between 10 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Most kids aren't taking naps. Most kids are up. People are eating. That's the least objectionable, but you can change that through the programming. But it is recommended that it runs every week for half an hour to 45 minutes. It runs for half an hour, and then there's a cool down period.
But you believe that through the permitting and planning process that Toll would be agreeable to placing those buildings in a location that's most suitable and furthest away from occupied dwellings. Is that correct?
The answer to that is yes. It has to make sense from a wastewater standpoint, meaning that I get the majority of the flow there, where I can pump to a single location, and I'd like to have it adjacent to one of my 2 drip irrigation fields, either in the northwest corner or the southeast. My recommendation was to put it down in the southeast adjoining to that. So we have already started that process. When you do master planning for something like that, one of the biggest concerns you have is where do you put it so it's the least impact? Because quite honestly, Toll is probably the one who's most motivated on that, because they have to sell the units. And this is a large development that's going to take multiple years to sell. So they clearly want to make sure that it has the least impact on the future residents of anyone. They probably have as big a vested interest as the township does in this.
Okay, and you mentioned the use of the drip fields and that there's 2 different areas for drip fields. In your testimony, you mentioned something about needing 13, and I didn't hear the word. You said 13-something acres. Was it what? 13
wetted acres. So that's like, if you think of it, that is a net area that will actually be within, 2 feet of a disposal. So that will actually be my permitted area. In order to have 13 wetted areas, because there's manifolds and piping and areas for access roads around, it's my experience that I need about 18 acres in order to net 13 acres of wetted. There's also areas where you may have a lower application rate than what we are anticipating now. So that's why you expand from the 13 to the 18 acres. And the good thing about our fields is that they are relatively, I don't want to say square, but they're nicely shaped for the design, for the installation of drip irrigation, which has to be installed on contour, and the drip tubing no closer than 2 feet apart.
And the township currently today does not own any drip irrigation systems, does it?
Not to my knowledge.
And is it Toll's proposal to have the community system be offered for dedication to the township?
That's definitely our first priority. If the township would not receive or accept dedication, we would then go to a third-party PUC, such as Aqua Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania American Water Company, or someone like that. We would then sell it to them, and they would then take it, and it would be regulated by the Public Utilities Commission.
And is it your experience that a drip irrigation community system there is a market for that with a PUC type company?
Absolutely. Anything more than 250 units is definitely a valuable asset.
And there's not a proposal that the homeowners association would ever become the owner of this community system. Is that correct?
No, that would be, I guess that would be the third option if for some reason a PUC regulated entity would not take it, but I don't see that as a realistic possibility. But when you go down the hierarchy, municipal ownership first, third party PUC, and then an HOA will be the last. And I would say least desirable, but it is a viable option.
Are you aware of any facilities that Toll built that are now being maintained by a homeowners association that use drip irrigation?
I'm not, but I don't know all their properties, so I don't do all their wastewater work. So I'm not aware of any, but it doesn't mean that there's not. I have no personal knowledge of any.
But you would, if you were representing the township, you would shy away from ever having an approval for an HOA to be the ultimate owner and maintainer of a drip system, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's see. The land where you have designated, and I know it's not 100% designed yet, but the general locations of the drip fields, you would agree with me that that land should be restricted and there should be no other uses allowed of that land other than for the disposal, correct?
Yes. I mean, you could allow passive recreation, somebody could walk around it or walk around our access roads, but no, we don't encourage any active recreation at all on there or any other uses. So what's normally done is we normally put like a picket fence around it, basically to restrict access, and we'll allow people to use our access roads as a monitor, as part of a trail network. But no, we discourage that. We also keep the grass, the crop, which is a grass, we try to keep that higher, meaning 6 to 12 inches, basically to discourage anyone from utilizing that, from it becoming a kickball field or a baseball field or anything like that. So we try to discourage that through the management of our crop.
Okay. And Greg Ademan already referenced back to Board Exhibit 55, which was Carroll Engineering letter of October 3rd, 2019. And in that correspondence, Bill Malin suggests that the best option for sewage disposal is actually to connect to the public sewer system. Do you agree with that recommendation?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And are you familiar with the Planning Commission's recommendations with respect to this project for sewer connecting to the public sewer system and making various upgrades?
Yes, I am.
And would you agree that that's a good recommendation for the applicant to adhere to?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And as part of that, the applicant would be required and responsible to get all necessary permits for the various upgrades that you referenced to the collection system, as well as the pump stations and just anything you referenced tonight in terms of upgrading systems to be able to handle their effluent or sewage.
Yes, both the Act 537 plan, the design and permitting, and the construction.
Have you had any subsequent or any meetings or conversations with the DEP since this second application has been filed?
No, I have not.
Okay, so
in relation to this project, no, I have not.
Okay, so all of your communication right now relating to planning for sewer has really just been with Carroll Engineering.
That is correct.
Do you have any reason to believe that DEP would object to any of the proposals that you have suggested with respect to either on-lot or public sewer?
No, I do not. As a matter of fact, my opinion is that DEP's highest preferences, in their opinion, the most reliable is connection to an existing municipally owned and operated wastewater treatment plant and public sewer system. That would be their number one, and DEP would scrutinize the use of a community system when there was capacity available in the existing public sewer system. They, however, would respect the township's 537 plan, but I believe they would ask the township to strongly consider a connection to public sewer.
Thank you. That was going to be my last question. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Kristen. Mark Thompson for Neighbors for Crebilly.
Hi, Fred.
Hey, no, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Fred, can you just explain again why you're proposing to have the system, or why is it recommended to have the system in the southeast corner of the property?
There's two reasons for that. Is number one, it's adjacent to a disposal field, which minimizes the infrastructure that I have over there. But really, it's one of the furthest areas away from all of the proposed and existing houses. It is probably the best area where I'm out of a floodplain, and that that I have the biggest buffer around that proposed treatment plant location.
This is the type of system that you want to keep away from streams and floodplains, Fred?
It's required to be out of the 100-year floodplain by regulation. So yes, any system you want to have out of the floodplain by design. Most wastewater treatment plants are in low areas and are adjoining to floodplains. With DEP regulation requires us to be a minimum of 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain.
Okay, and you comply with the system. I mean, I know you don't have all the details yet, but that is something you've determined.
Yes, that stream corridor that's kind of adjacent to that, and there's a buffer zone shown that we are out of any known or delineated 100-year floodplain. But that would be verified during the detailed design.
And that would include the drip irrigation areas as well, Fred? Is that correct?
Well, technically there is no regulation that a drip irrigation can't be in a 100-year floodplain. But from a practicality standpoint, it absolutely has to be. Because from the bottom of my drip emitter to the height of the hydraulic mound, which is at the seasonal high groundwater table, plus the impact that we do, there needs to be a minimum of 4 feet of vertical separation. So it could not be down in a floodplain and still have 4 feet of vertical separation from I should say could. It would be highly unlikely and very improbable that you could ever have 4 feet of vertical separation from the seasonal high groundwater table and be in the 100-year floodplain.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thanks, Fred.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Kathy Labram for Thornberry.
I have no questions for this witness, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. From Crawford for Birmingham.
Thank you. Yes, a few questions, if I might. Fred, your testimony, as I understood it, was that you would, on behalf of Toll Brothers, prefer the public sewer option. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, yes, I would.
And in that context, would Toll Brothers then be footing the bill for all of the upgrades that you described?
That's what they've represented to me, but I can't speak for them. But yes, that has clearly been represented to me that they will pay for all the necessary infrastructure to convey it to the existing treatment plant, as well as purchase the required capacity from Westtown Township.
And they would also pay whatever the treatment tapping fee would be, I presume?
That's what the last thing I said, yes. Yes, they would have to purchase that capacity. I believe it's currently owned by Westtown. They've already purchased it from West Goshen. So Toll Brothers would actually purchase that capacity from Westtown Township.
And you had indicated that either system, as you've described it, either the community system or tying into the public, would be feasible, correct?
That is correct.
Completely feasible.
Yes.
And that's also your opinion that either would be approved by DEP.
That is a correct statement. Yes, I believe that either system would be approved by DEP.
Okay. So am I correct then in assuming that Toll Brothers would perform either system depending upon whether Westtown Township changes to the 537 plan or leaves it in place? Is that really what the bottom line is?
That's exactly the bottom line.
Okay.
Both are feasible. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Mr. Bevilacqua, if you're still on for the school district or West Glen HOA.
Yeah, I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Skipping down. Mr. Dahl, Robert Dahl.
Okay, I have no questions.
Oh, thank you, sir. How about Edwin or Lakita Boyer?
We have no questions at this time.
Thank you. David or Catherine Price?
No questions.
Thank you. Jennifer Kramer?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Carol Weller? Miss Weller? Carol Weller?
I think she logged off.
Was that you, Joanne?
Yes, it was.
All right, they're still showing on here, so we'll, if they come through, we'll double back. Mr. Worth, William Worth?
I have no questions at the moment.
Thank you, sir. Linda Miller?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I unmuted myself, Carol Weller.
Ms. Weller, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I was wanted to ask this question. I know you would be, if they do go with an on-site disposal system, and you're going to be locating these away from the streams. How about possibly affecting any underground streams, which our neighboring development, our well water could possibly be affected by? Be absolutely sure that our drinking water would not be negatively affected?
Yeah, let me answer that question two ways. Let me answer the water quality. Is that the standard for that would have the greatest impact will be total nitrogen. So we would be required, we would actually be treating it to less than 10 milligrams per liter, which is the state drinking water standard. There will be further dilution on the drip fields down to a lower level than that. So from the start, without even dilution, we would meet the drinking water standard for total nitrogen. And that's really the one that we would go through. What there also is we would not, we cannot intercept any streams or springs directly, because we need a minimum from the bottom of my drip emitters to the seasonal high groundwater table plus a mound. So once we add this additional water, the groundwater table is actually going to increase in elevation. I need to have a minimum of 4 feet of difference or elevation of soil in between there, which will provide additional treatment and filtration as it goes down through there. So as a matter of fact, drip irrigation is normally required in many areas where because of the groundwater recharge and the water balance, that if everyone relies upon individual wells, many townships will require drip irrigation or other on-lot management. Whereas if there's public water that's proposed, then they will usually go to sewer. But that's not necessarily always true. But no, this is actually, drip irrigation is actually recommended in areas that use individual wells.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ellen Steele?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Karen Grime?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Simkovich.
Yes, I have a couple questions. Have you been physically at the location where the on-site treatment plant will be in that southeast corner or southwest corner?
Yes, I have. Yep, yes.
Will there be any topography alterations in that area?
No, there will not be, because it's going to be drip irrigation that's adjoining to that area. So we are not allowed to grade disturb within 25 feet of the proposed disposal fields. And we're going to be adjoining to the large disposal field right down there. So there will be no grading or anything in that 11.6 areas besides the treatment plant. When I say grading, we're going to have to install the piping underground, so there'll be an excavation for that. But once I get within 25 feet of the drip field, it's actually vibratory plowed in, so there will be no grading down there or earth moving down in that area.
The reason for the question was I believe right at the, I don't know what direction it is, northern or whatever, there's a gully there that when we get heavy rain tends to fill up with a lot of water.
That's actually a stream corridor that's down there that we actually mapped that as a stream corridor and provided a buffer zone from that. Yes, no, it begins, 150 yards in off of the intersection there of 202 and Street Road. If you stand on that intersection where that house is, you can see that gently, goes out and goes into that drainage area down in there. It's the end of the pasture in there.
So if we have one of our increasingly more frequent heavy downpours in that shouldn't cause an issue with the on-site treatment plant?
No,
Water
we actually
table
have to
going
stay out of that area. And the area is delineated, the map, I'm not sure what map you're looking at, but we're probably 100 yards at least from where that stream is.
And a related question on the I'll say, were there any things done about airflow or air quality in the wind selection over the possible site in terms of smell factor? Like, could it carry if there's 20, 30, 40 mile an hour winds?
Well, 20, 30, 40 mile an hour winds would dissipate it, and you would not see that at all. It's actually the calm periods when you have like a summer night and you get thermals that actually carry odors significantly further. The odors would actually, if there were any, they would follow that stream corridor down across our property, across our entrance, and down that way. So that is one of the things that is looked at. It's historically everyone has said that it's westerly winds. That's not really the case. The case is really when it comes to odors and anything like that, it happens on still nights and thermals, and it follows the thermal. The thermal goes from high temperature to low temperature normally in the night, which follows a stream corridor down through. If you have 20, 30 mile an hour winds, you will never smell a treatment plant. It's a still night when you would smell a treatment plant, when any odor would be able to be concentrated, and it would then follow the stream corridor.
No other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simkovich. Fenton Mejia.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you. William Vosberg or Dr. Cecilia Wright?
I did have a question, thank you. I'm wondering why there would be a consideration of the drip system installed when in fact they can tap into, and it seemed to be preferred to tap into the district, the area's own wastewater sewer system.
the reason for that is the township's current Act 537 plan, which is probably scheduled to be updated, currently identifies this, the means of disposal here, as being a community system. And it just hasn't been updated to do that. So a planning module would actually be required to change or update the township's Act 537 plan. So the only reason that we are proposing this is that's what's required by the township's Act 537 plan.
Okay, and the other thing, the dry stream bed, we're familiar with that, and it does run directly into the Radley Run Creek. But that would only be on, you'd only see that when it's raining, really.
I would agree with that it's basically a dry drainage ditch that basically just collects the water that basically from 202, it kind of funnels right down into that area of the pasture and then flows down along that section.
I also think that wouldn't there be a lot of things that could possibly go wrong with a drip system?
I'd say a drip system, really not. The drip system is taking clean treated effluent, and basically what it does is that there's an emitter that's 6 to 8 inches or 8 to 12 inches underneath the ground, and it basically irrigates the same way an agricultural irrigation system would work. It's underground, but that's why they use those drip emitters in it's commonly used in like nurseries and things like that. And I like it because it's actually in the ground, so it's protected. There's nothing that can really hit it. I mean, what could happen? Could a groundhog chew down through it and bite one of them off? We'll know that with an alarm, and we take it and put a repair thing. But everything's underground. There's very little to go. And really all that's doing is transferring the clean water into the soil and dispersing of it. And the emitters are every 2 feet. So on this overall job, I would actually have, look at my report, I'd actually have approximately 283,000 linear feet of this drip emitter. So the loss of any one section is de minimis, when you have that many linear feet. And that's the goal, is not to concentrate it, but to evenly distribute it over approximately 13 acres so that it doesn't impact the groundwater table. It can slowly infiltrate in, and that it can also be diluted